This
All
week's
right.
Seen Again, 1986's
The Hitcher.
The Hitcher.
I kind of feel like I don't want to give away a lot with this movie, though, because I feel like this is a movie that I really want to encourage people to see, and I don't want to spoil it for them.
On the other hand, this movie's older than I am, and if you haven't seen it, like, at least once, or you don't already know the spoiler, maybe you should just watch more movies.
I don't know.
It's been around for a while.
I took some pretty extensive notes on this one, but this is the kind of movie that has such a deep backstory. It would probably be good if we did it as one of our main features. Please don't. I have it on my HBO watch list. See?
Damn it.
We will not spoil. I do have lots of info, though, but I really had to condense because I just kept researching and I had all these notes and I was like, oh, this is just a Seen Again segment. I can't get too deep on this
is definitely another Seen Again segment where we'd ended up talking for 2 hours just on the, like, I think next season Seen Again is going to be like a Patreon only show. That way we can...
We might have to, do single Seen Again episodes, or maybe we do like the typical Seen Again, but then we do an additional episode where it's just on that movie and go even deeper. But
because I feel like a lot of the Seen Agains we've been thinking of, just like off the top of our head, we could go way farther with what we've done, and we have just as much fun doing it.
The Hitcher, I first saw this when I was really little. I think I was at my aunt's house because my aunt and my cousins were big fans of this movie, and it's a movie that has always stuck with me. It's not your typical, like, action, horror, slasher movie. There's something about this movie that is unsettling, yet poetic in a weird way. And first of all, The Hitcher was written by a man named Eric Red. And if you're watching this movie and all the landscapes and everything and the quietness, because there are a lot of scenes where there's not dialogue or there's very little dialogue. And if you're watching this and you've seen the vampire movie from the 80s, Near Dark, and you're like, wow, this kind of reminds me of that, it's because Eric Red also wrote Near Dark. And can you imagine this movie if it had had a Tangerine Dream score?
It would have been...
I do like the music in this.
There are parts of it. There was one scene in particular where I even thought, is this Tangerine Dream? Like, because it gets really close to that, like, sound that they do.
Yeah.
But it's just, like, there was actually one part where we're watching it, and it's, like, a really tense scene, but the score was fucking slapping, so I was like... like, it was...
But, this movie came out in 1986. It was written by Eric Red. I believe he wrote this when he was 20 or early 20s, and he was trying to get into the industry and not having a lot of luck, so he would start doing the drive-away thing where you drive someone's vehicle from one state to another. Like if someone has moved away and they left their car behind, but you want to maybe go to a specific state and you're able to take their vehicle to them. He did that. He rode from, I think he wanted to go from like Dallas to California. So over about 6 months, he started working on this script because he would be driving from state to state, and he one time was listening to the Doors song Riders on the Storm, and he had this idea for like this killer out in the middle of nowhere, like on the highway. And so he started working on this script, and I believe it took him about 6 months, and then he just started like writing letters to various Hollywood producers, like, I have this script and I really want to send it to you. The original script was extremely gory, like even worse than the actual
Which actually, a lot
version.
of there's there's not that much on-screen, like, gore in this. Like, you don't see a lot of things.
It's the intention, though,
Yeah.
that is very brutal. Like, it was supposed to be a lot worse. There's a specific scene with a finger, and in the script it was supposed to be an eyeball, and there were supposed to be more random killings, like more beheadings and stuff like that.
But I feel like having more, like, killings and more violence would take away from the psychological aspect of the Ryder character.
Mm-hmm.
Everything he does seems like such a pinpoint, planned thing that having excesses of it would make him almost feel chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
And the scary part of him is that he's so focused.
He really is like a specter in this movie, because he comes out of nowhere, and there were even scenes where you were like, well, wouldn't someone have seen this? But he's so past this, like, point where he's so impulsive, and it's kind of like he wants to be stopped, but he can't stop himself, so he just does anything, and he has no fear, and that seems to add to this, like, unstoppable appeal about him.
The scariest parts of the movie for me, and, like, not scariest, but the parts that really got me, were where you went, well, alright, it's kind of quiet, and then something small and insignificant would be out of place. Where you go, oh, well, that's not right. Oh, no. Like, and then it, like, there are these, like, moments of dawning on you where you realize what you just saw and what could be coming up. It's the thing that's scary about this movie is, what is the next thing?
Yeah, you cannot predict in this movie what's going to happen next. I think that's one reason I've always liked the movie, because it is pretty unpredictable, and you have no idea how this guy is going to be stopped. There are stakes involved in this movie with characters. Was this your first time watching it?
This is my second time watching it. The first time I watched it, I was really, really young.
Yeah.
I mean, I was probably like 6 or 7. Like, way young. I was too young to understand the psychological aspects of it. And like a lot of people in my head, there's one super ridiculous famous scene in this movie. And if you ask a lot of people who haven't seen this in a long time, they, like me, would tell you that was the end of the movie. Do you know how many people would think that that one scene that everybody remembers is the end of the movie? Because I forgot the movie went past that.
Which scene are you talking about?
With the semi-truck.
Oh.
There are a lot of people who will not remember that there is probably 15 minutes of movie after that.
That is, so it is probably the most famous thing about this movie when people look back on it, and it is one of the best because it's not shown, so you are left to your imagination, and it is very brutal.
It was voted as one of the 100 scariest scenes, like that collection of like directors and actors and stuff. They voted that one of the 100 scariest scenes in film.
Yeah.
I would have to look up what it was, but
yeah. So this movie came out in 1986. There was a remake of it in the 2000s, and the scene that you were just talking about, they did decide to show it, and people were like, oh, that's not as effective as the original. You took like all the mystery out of it. And there actually was a sequel made in 2003 where they brought back C. Thomas Howell, and I believe it was John Ryder's son, or they alluded that it could possibly be his son.
That's dumb.
Played by Jake Busey.
Played by they went way crazy with it.
I had completely forgotten that there was a sequel and a remake until I started doing more research. But, so The original script was even more brutal and gory, but producers were still interested in it because of the way it was written, and it was interesting to them because it was unpredictable and it was like poetic and evil because you don't know where this guy is coming from. We don't know anything about him. There's not a backstory or anything
and not only
about
that,
him.
One of the things that happens in like slasher movies, and this kind of like was out there to mess with the slasher fan crowd, because one of the things about slasher movies is that a lot of slashers, especially like killers in movies that you like in bigger films, they have these rules. They always establish rules at some point in the movie. John Ryder has no rules. There is no limit to this guy. He can do any. You never see him do it, and that's the messed up part, because something just happened and you don't realize it until it's way too late.
And this movie was directed by Robert Harmon. He was a still photographer turned cameraman, which you can definitely see in this movie because there are a lot of very beautiful landscape shots, even some of the camera angles and the compositions,
some of the movements.
And,
there's this really
yeah.
there's this really cool dolly shot where C. Thomas Howell walks around the back of a bus, and then when he walks back around, so the camera doesn't just go from one side of the bus to the other, it almost like U's. So you see the bumper, and then it comes back up to where it was.
I just realized we haven't had any of the photos going.
Oh, for this? Oh, sorry.
But yeah, Robert Harmon, I don't think he's really done anything big since this. He seems to work with Tom Selleck a lot. He's worked on a lot of Tom Selleck starring TV shows, and these days he directs a lot of that Tom Selleck show. It's like called Blue Bloods or something.
Oh, yeah, about the cops.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because The Hitcher is one of the most ACAB movies I've ever seen in my life. Seriously, there were parts of this movie that
100% honestly hate cops. And I was like, man, these cops suck. Like, and the problem with it that we've seen 30 some years later, it's not that far off. So, like, there are these moments where you're like, that would never really happen. And then you think about it, and that's when it gets, oh, yeah, it would. You know what I mean?
It's weird to me because I saw this movie when I was very young, and around the same time, I also saw this werewolf movie that was made in the 90s called Bad Moon, starring Michael Paré from Streets of Fire, and Eric Red wrote that movie and directed that movie as well. So it's kind of like, in my memories, I feel like I saw these movies at around the same time, but I never realized it was like written by the same person. So a little more about the casting. For the role of John Ryder, David Bowie was considered, Harry Dean Stanton, Terrence Stamp.
That would have been creepy.
Physically,
yeah,
there's not much of a difference, but I guess the producers really had their eyes on him to the point where they carried a photo of him and would include it with the script, but then he ended up turning the role down.
Which is, like, Terrence Stamp would have been really cool, because he, like Rutger Hauer, has that
those
like,
icy blue eyes. Yeah.
Like, they can do that just intense stare.
Yeah. Sting was considered, Sam Shepard. Sam Elliott was really close to accepting, but he didn't agree with the salary, so he ended up turning it down.
Sting in the desert, huh?
At the time, Rutger Hauer was trying to get away from villainous roles.
Good luck.
I mean, at this point, he was probably most well known for Blade Runner, but He had also done other movies, like he had worked with Jennifer Jason Leigh previously on this movie called Flesh and Blood. And that's why she accepted this role, because she wanted to work with him again. And a movie that I used to watch, but that would also be a good scene again because I don't remember it. It was called Lady Hawk. It's Rutger Hauer, Michelle Pfeiffer, a very young Matthew Broderick. It's like...
Michelle Pfeiffer's?
Yeah. I forget, like, I think he's a wolf and she turns into an owl, but they're in their human forms at different points of the day because they're, like, cursed. They're these cursed lovers, and someone put a curse on them that they can't be together at the same time. And so, like during the day, like, she's a bird and he's in his human form. And
that sounds like a lot.
Yeah,
sounds like
that
a
would be
lot
a good movie to rewatch because I haven't seen it since I was, like, a kid, like, probably less than 10 years old. So Rutger Hauer was specifically looking for non-villainous roles, and then he got a hold of this script, and he said it really took a hold of him. And he was like, you know what, if I'm going to play a villain one last time, this is the role that I want to go out on. And for the role of Jim Halsey, Matthew Modine was considered.
No.
Tom Cruise was considered.
Oh, no.
Emilio Estevez.
That would have been good.
So a few of
That's
the
different
Outsiders crew.
Like, basically
Yeah.
all the Outsiders.
Yeah. But then C. Thomas Howell, they really liked his look. And he, at the time, was trying to stay away from anything, like, thriller related, and he...
Well, because he also kind of, especially, like, in the 2000s, he got typecast as crazy serial killer for a while. Mostly on TV shows. He was a running villain on Criminal Minds.
Yeah.
For a whole
this was
season.
1986, though. He
No,
was
I'm saying,
still,
like, later on.
Yeah.
Like, he went back to it and had a good career of it for a while.
And he had heard rumors of the script for this movie that it was just like a generic thriller, but then he actually read it and he couldn't put it down. And then he heard Rutger Hauer was attached and he really wanted to work with him. But then when they were filming, he was terrified of him the entire time, which you can definitely get the sense of in a lot of the scenes, but he found him to be so intimidating the whole time that they filmed.
And there's some of the mannerisms and the things that the John Ryder character does that I don't even think are in the script. I think it's Rutger Hauer was like, what would John do in this moment? More than, oh, this particular thing he's doing is in the script. Rutger Hauer was like, it like really, you could tell he really took in this character and then gave him life. Because there's a moment with two pennies.
Yes.
That I guarantee you was not in the script, because when it happened, you see C. Thomas Howell like, what is happening? Like, he doesn't look like he's acting. He looks like he's genuinely confused.
Well, I won't lie. There are a lot of reaction shots from C. Thomas Howell that crack me up in this movie, but I feel like it's genuine, like, especially in that diner scene, like, I do get the sense that he was, like, really scared, and so his face was moving kind of, like, in these funny ways, and there's a few other reaction shots that kind of make me laugh, but it just makes it more real to me.
There are reaction shots that'll make you laugh because you, along with the Jim character, both go, there's no fucking way. Like, you and him feel the same thing at the same time, and you're thinking it, and you see it on his face. You're just, there's no way. And that's why you laugh. It's like, yeah, exactly. Like, and it happens quite a few times, actually.
And this movie gets started immediately.
Boom!
So... yeah, John Ryder is essentially this hitchhiker that Jim picks up, and it pretty much just starts with that. Like, that's how it starts. Like, is Jim picking this guy up? It's raining. And he's pretty much, like, threatening him
right
away.
Right off the bat.
And so you never know what's going to happen next, how Jim is going to get out of this. Jim keeps getting put in these scenarios, which at first you were like, oh, the only reason this movie is going on is because his character's not doing the smart things. But it seems like that way at first, but then he starts to get a handle on what's happening. He starts to understand what it is that John wants, and that it's not just going to stop. The police won't be able to stop him. He's pretty much the only one that can, because that's what John wants.
And it's not a spoiler, but to say that at the end that they are the only people who understand each other. Mm-hmm. Jim is kind of a loser. Mm-hmm. John is what he is. He is the monster that he is. And to say that they're the only two people who actually understand each other at the end is an accurate statement. Mm-hmm. Because nobody else understands Ryder. Nobody understands Jim. Which actually, at that point, there's a reason for that. But the look of Jim in this movie, I said at one point, is one mustache away from Randy. And he's got like this, it's not a mullet, but it's like perfectly curled long hair. Mm-hmm. He's got a very like should be driving a GTO look on him. Skinny jeans. It was the cool kid look.
The flannel.
Right.
Yeah.
It was the 1980s cool kid look.
Yeah. You do get a sense in some of the scenes too, especially towards the end. There is kind of this, like, slightly erotic kind of feel coming from John towards Jim. So there is, like, this strange connection between the two of them, and it's to the point where it's like they start sensing each other. It's not your typical slasher, and it's like quiet, it's odd, it's brutal.
Right. When you hear people say psychological thriller, generally they just mean, oh, there's not that much violence. Mm-hmm. This is genuinely a psychological movie, because as you're thinking about what Jim's thinking and what Ryder's thinking, you're trying to figure out, like, both sides at the same time. Like, it makes you as an audience get involved in your head. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure when it happened, but I objectively looked at myself watching this, and I was like, oh, I am like staring at I haven't been this like enthralled by a movie in a long time, where the rest of the world kind of didn't exist for a while, because I was so into what was happening. Like, really, I felt like a little kid watching something really cool again.
Mm-hmm. I just had a thought, and I totally forgot what it
sorry.
was. Oh, no, it's okay. I'm really happy to hear how you feel about the movie, because it's always been a favorite of mine. And this movie, when it came out, did not do well at the box office at all.
That's insane to me.
It only made $5.8 million on a $7.9 million budget. Critics hated it. Roger Ebert gave it 0 stars.
How many times do we have to bring up Roger Ebert being wrong? There were so many years where people lived and died by what Roger Ebert? Roger Ebert.
Did we both say
no,
Robert?
No, I said...
Oh.
Never mind. I got it wrong. But, like, there were so many years. There were full decades where people lived and died by what that guy said. And looking back at the amount of times he was just dead wrong is kind of crazy.
Well, that was most of the critics for this movie. Even Rutger Hauer came out and was like, oh, the critics don't understand, like, this is a movie about, like, the pure evil. You don't need to have the backstory. And then Roger Ebert came out, like, going back and forth with him, like, no, I understand that this movie was not written well. Like, that kind of thing. Because a lot of people at the time didn't like that this movie had so much mystery and that things weren't explained. And that's what I like about it.
It's the John Carpenter thought of there is no understanding evil.
You have, this movie gets going, like, right away. We have no idea why. The idea that you can kind of make it up in your head, like, has this guy just been on the highway for, like, years and he's just doing this? I believe he's wearing a wedding band.
And that's one of the things. They do things in this movie that once you think you get it, or once you think you have an idea of, all right, this is what I'm going to make as my headcanon, they'll put something in front of you to make you completely question what you were already thinking. Because there is a part where you're watching this and you got to figure it out. You're like, oh, okay, so he's been on the road, he's been doing this for a while. And then he puts his hands to his face and he's wearing a wedding ring. And you're like, well, now everything I thought means nothing. Because how, you know?
And it is purely like cat and mouse, because you have John coming after Jim, and then towards the end it starts to turn, but then in between, John does not want anyone else involved with Jim. Well, and so it gets to the point where
Plug your ears, Nick, because I'm
not gonna
we're
say
walking on the line.
But like you had mentioned the thing with the cops earlier, and it gets to the point where John does start, taking out people because he doesn't want them to get in Jim's way of hunting him down in return, and it's just
there's one production choice on this movie that I will say is kind of hilariously bad. There's one production choice on this film that when it happened, I went, oh, why? At some point in this movie, there's a tiger roar placed.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
On an action. Like all the way through the movie up to that point, I was like, man, this is and then that tiger roar happened and I was like, the 80s. Like,
I'll be honest, I don't remember ever noticing that before, so I didn't know if it was just this DVD copy, but that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. But are we supposed to have another screen?
No, I just didn't make this bit. I figured we could just do it now that we understand what we're doing. Okay. It can just all be in front of us. That way, it can just be right here, and we don't have to be talking to people like this.
Yeah.
Because then that's the side. That's a profile.
But yeah, this is probably my favorite Rutger Hauer performance ever. I know a lot of people love Blade Runner, but this to me.
Okay. I can't put it above Blade Runner. I can't. But I'm not saying that it's not as amazing as Blade Runner. Which, by the way, John Ryder, the name John Ryder, is bullshit. Because it's a mixture of John Doe and what he does.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bullshit name from the beginning. As soon as he says John Ryder, you're like, no, fuck you. You're lying. And he even says it. He gives the line like he's lying. He wants you to know that. Like, the character wants you to know it's lying.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I can't put it above Blade Runner.
I think it's because for me, I didn't see Blade Runner until I was like a teenager, so I had always seen this movie first, and this always stayed with me.
And I think that monologue at the end of Blade Runner, I was really young when I saw it, and I feel like it was the first time at the end of a movie I had a revelation of thought. Oh no. Like, you realize what's happening at the end of that movie during that monologue. And I was watching that movie because we talk about my babysitter, Susie.
Yeah.
Who she's the one that fostered, oh, you like science fiction movies? Check out this 300 science fiction movies I have. Find the ones you like. And I watched Blade Runner and Soldier in the same day. Oh. And I watched Soldier first, and then I watched Blade Runner, and I get to the end, and I had this moment of revelation when you realize that like the character's dying, and he'd seen so much, the beauties and the awfulness of everything of existence was leaving, and I started crying, and she was like she understood that even at a young age I got it. So I don't think just because of that, I don't think I could put any Rutger Hauer performance above Blade Runner. But if I'm not gonna say this isn't absolutely amazing, because he's scared, like just his like looking into the camera scared the shit out of me in this movie.
He does a lot of that, and it's like he really was toying with C. Thomas Howell, because that diner scene, it's like he was kind of getting a kick out of his reactions, and he had this look like he was trying not to giggle.
There's a couple times where he looks like I'm running this game and you don't even realize we're playing, and he looks like he's having fun.
That's why I think I really like this performance so much, because not only is he scary, but there are moments where he has that charisma, and then those moments where you're like, yeah, like when things are going a certain way and these other people are after Jim, and then he comes to kind of save the moment. It's like, I don't know, it's like everything in one, but it is definitely a scary performance, and just he doesn't even have that much dialogue.
And we also can't count out one of the greatest Rutger Hauer performances, Hobo with a Shotgun.
Oh yeah.
I'm joking. That movie's insane.
I
Like
don't
it's not a good.
remember it.
It's not a fantastic movie. It's not a great performance by him. It's Rutger Hauer just kind of doing angry face the whole time. But man, if Robert Rodriguez can't make like a fucking bloody movie, that movie is.
He didn't make that, did he?
Oh yeah.
I thought that was just like an independent
Okay,
movie.
so the trailer
was
for
he a
it,
producer maybe?
I feel like he directed it. The only reason I say that is because that was from like one of those like, oh, send in your fake trailer competitions, and it didn't win, but Robert Rodriguez saw it and got involved. Like, I want to do that. So it wasn't even a real movie until Robert Rodriguez wanted to do it. But say his name 10 times fast. It's not a great performance, but it is a gross movie. If you ever like, what kind of horror movie is that called? Splatterpunk, where it's just like people just blow up like water balloons.
Yeah, like a splatter exploitation kind of thing.
That's definitely what it is. Yeah, it's kind of gross actually.
See, that was like older. That was like in the last 10, 15 years. Like as a kid, I knew Rutger Hauer from this, and then there was also this other movie I remember seeing called like Blind Fury, where he was like this blind, like
he was a ninja.
Sword.
He was a blind samurai.
Yeah, and
it's on HBO Max right now.
Oh, we'll have to rewatch it, because what I remember most, so it had him. Meg Foster is in it briefly. Meg Foster was in They Live, and she was in Masters of the Universe.
Meg Foster's eyes. We talk about Rutger Hauer's eyes. Meg Foster has a once in a generation eyes.
And then
they will mess you up.
The kid that he has to protect in Blind Fury was one of the Step by Step kids.
It's one of
that show Step by Step. I hated his character on that show, but that was him.
Fergus?
No. That's Clarissa Explains It
All.
All.
Yeah, that was Clarissa Explains It All.
What?
I don't even remember what one was Step by Step? There were so many.
Suzanne Summers and the dude from Dallas, where they get married and they each have like a set of kids.
That's the Brady Bunch.
Kind of.
Okay, I kind of remember
and
it.
then they have a cousin named Cody, who he was like a martial arts guy, like in real life.
I remember the Cody character. Yeah.
And Suzanne Summers, her oldest daughter was Carol. I cannot remember the dad's kids' names though.
Because the Cody character was always he was like a big dummy.
He has like a valley boy
Like a
kind of,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, that is probably of the TGIF sitcoms, that is the one I remember the least.
And because Suzanne Summers also had the son, the blonde with the glasses that was in the Beethoven movies. Beethoven the dog.
No, I know what you're talking about. That's just a deep cut. You guys think we have this show for me. No. This is why she's, like, this is her show. I
have all these movies and TV shows just in my head constantly, and it's just how I remember certain points of my life are tied with moments of pop culture.
It really is amazing. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes you do things like that, and I'm like, fuck, I'm an idiot. How does, like, she's so good at this.
I don't know. And I know facts and stuff about people that I'll never know, but I just know things about them, and I don't know why things like that just stick in my head easily, and I don't know. But now it's gonna drive me crazy that I can't remember what that kid's name was.
Don't worry about it.
Step by Step.
It was a sitcom actor who probably didn't even have that big of a role from the 1990s. You're thinking way too hard about that.
I don't know. I'll probably remember it by the end of the episode.
And that is The Hitcher.
The Hitcher.
1986.
Yes.
Directed by, what's his name?
Robert Harmon.
Robert Harmon.
Written by Eric Red, who also wrote Near Dark and Bad Moon. If you've never seen Bad Moon, it was a werewolf movie from the 90s. We should go through
and find all his movies, because they all seem to have this, like, openness to them. There's this openness to all his movies that we'll have to kind of check them out. And he has a really distinct writing style, and anytime you see one of his movies, you know it. You can almost recognize it by there. It's not confined. It's like the whole world is involved in.
Yeah. And in such a simple way, where he makes it seem like it would be so easy.
Especially shooting in these beautiful these beautiful scenic places that they did. At some points, I was like, that's a matte painting.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It smells so bad in here.
But yeah, The Hitcher, you can watch it on HBO Max. We do have a physical copy of it. We do have a friend who's going to be borrowing it, but if you would like to see it and you have HBO Max, you can watch it there, or...
Who's borrowing it?
Lance.
Oh.
I told him that...
Oh, yeah, I gotta take it to... Do I gotta take it to work tomorrow? Okay. He also is probably going to be mad because we haven't watched any of his movies still. It's fine. He will get them back. We're going to make this a clip. Lance, you're going to get your movies back eventually. I promise. Clip that. All right.
Okay.